Hey, welcome back to a new episode. So, today we're gonna be kind of steering away from our previous topics, which has been about government structures and evaluating the effectiveness and whether we should consider different options. Today, we're actually going to be going back to the roots of the purpose of this channel, which is to just spread awareness and hopefully going to reach audiences that also empathize with what is going on in our world today. So today we're going to be discussing some human rights issues currently, and hopefully this generates some thoughts for you. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode, and let's get straight into it. So today we're going to be discussing immigrant children in particular. We're going to be diving into how they are lacking resources and support systems, particularly, yes, in a broad range, like education and financial help and aids, but today we're going to be talking a little bit more about medical support. The website is Human Rights Watch, and the article is France. Migrant children sleep in the streets of Marseille, I think. Don't come for my pronunciation, please. I know it's completely butchered. And so they divided that large topic into a couple, like loss of mobility due to untreated tuberculosis, basically lack of medical support, and also undetected pregnancy, which is what I'll be talking about today. There's also just a lot of untreated illnesses, but we're going to be focusing on the pregnancy of young women. So this story is pretty heartbreaking. It says a teenage girl from West Africa had to flee a forced marriage in her country and experience sexual violence on the journey to Tunisia. And upon arriving at Marseille, she slept at the railway station until she was granted temporary emergency accommodations by the departmental service that houses children in critical or vulnerable situations. 3 weeks into her temporary emergency accommodation period, she still hadn't undergone an initial health assessment and received a negative age assessment. When she felt ill, a volunteer suggested she visited an association providing health services to migrants and Islam speakers in Marseille, and her medical exam showed that she was 11 weeks pregnant, and the social worker accompanied the girl to the hospital for an abortion and said that the doctors expressed confusion and suspicion due to the inconsistency between the date of birth on her identity documents and the paperwork from the department rejecting her age. It quoted, "For any young girl, an abortion is already difficult, but when added to that you experience suspicion, it turns into an extremely violent movement. A bit of softness would help. The violence these kids face is from multiple sources." So this article is especially heartfelt for me because I myself am a girl, and so reading anything about sexual violence and having to go through that in girlhood, I just think it's truly devastating to have to experience so much violence and abuse and still not receive the proper care and aid. I mean, at some point you really have to question the psychological toll that this takes on the kids. Is this trauma going to because obviously they aren't getting taken care of in the proper manner. So is this trauma going to carry out in their later years? Is it going to linger around for next generations? Because that is how generational abuse and this cycle is caused. It's when one generation is already not receiving the proper assistance, and so it passes down to generation after generation after generation until somebody decides to stand up and break the cycle, because this is serious. This is actually a pretty hard topic for me to talk about because I am just really compassionate towards anybody who has to be in this situation. I would never want to experience this myself. It's just such a dehumanizing feeling, and it takes so much courage to leave the forced marriage, especially after the abuse, and still not being validated. I just think that a lot of damage is for sure taken place, and I really wish that we could do something about it. Well, we could enforce a lot more, maybe aid systems, strengthen the medical assessments. Like, there should definitely be a lot more examinations that take place for immigrants like these, because God knows what they had to go through on their journey to this new land. So I definitely do believe that reinforcing the medical assessments and just making sure that their health and their well-being is up to par, and that none of the treatments are being neglected, because as we can tell from the article, there is a lot of untreated illnesses like the tuberculosis, and that just leads to a lot more damage physically on top of their current psychological trauma. So I really do think that providing aids in their health and their medical care will really enhance their life quality, especially when their education is already lacking. Yeah, but I still can't shake off this poor girl. I just feel so bad. And if you are a guy, this probably doesn't resonate as much, but still, I think a lot of this has to deal with feeling in control. And when you've experienced abuse like that, I think you are just so off balance. There's no sense of self-esteem at all, because your identity and your respect has just been completely stripped from you. Like, you put your trust and everything into this person. You may not love them because it is a forced marriage, but that comfort, that vulnerability, that femininity just completely got taken away when she was exposed to so much harm. Like, I think it's one to get taken advantage emotionally, but getting taken advantage of physically, it's like you're actually feeling it in your physical realm. And sometimes I think that can be a little bit harder to accept, especially with the abortion, because I've seen a lot of cases where it's like the event doesn't actually click in your head until you have to deal with the aftermath, such as the pregnancy, such as the abortion. So sometimes when when it's the direct consequence of feeling depressed or feeling unworthy. They are just kind of mixed in with denial. Like, acceptance is a little bit more difficult when it's all like feeling, but yeah, like I said, when you really have to deal with the consequence, aftermath, however you will, it just solidifies the entire thing. And I feel like not getting the correct care from your support system is pretty damaging, considering all that you've gone through, and on top of not having a home, not having the right health, not having the financial security, everything is so uncertain. And I think having a peace in mind that everything will be okay is just really important. So I think moving forward, there are definitely still things that we should strengthen in regards to assisting immigrants. We talked about control, so I kind of want to dive into that a little bit deeper, because I think a lot of the times what we lack, like our insecurities, stem from a sense of having to control. Because, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit more vulnerable. Sometimes I was raised to use food and snacks or whatever as a reward. So when I would accomplish something, I would reward myself with ice cream or cake or whatever. And that instant gratification was really reassuring, but as time went on, it was never enough. And your physical appearance obviously starts to get affected by your habits. And so that toxic relationship with food really just went downhill for me. As you age, obviously, as you're growing up, your body obviously changes, and you really just can't keep up with that lifestyle of rewarding yourself with food and then taking it away, like all the binging, all the restrictive diets, and all of that. And so I think you're like, okay, well, how does that relate to control? A lot of the times I think when you use food as a reward, it's because you're lacking confidence, and there's a part of you that is just, insecure, and you need the comfort of food to fill that void. When you are actually comfortable and confident in your own skin, then you don't really need to go out of your way to reward yourself with external sources of satisfaction. You don't really have to label it as something that is your treat or your cheat day. So I think this example that we read from our news article can actually be applied to how we view certain life habits of ours, because we all as humans strive to be the most comfortable, the happiest. Maybe not the happiest, because we are inherently pretty lazy, if I do say so myself. So we don't always make the best decisions for ourselves. Moving forward, I do think it's really important that we make sure that our priorities and our emotions are in line before we start seeking external gratification, because I do think it is all a mental battle. It really is. Everything has to do with what's going on in here. So that's why I think for AIDS, for NGOs and all volunteers that are providing aid, you really do have to cover a lot of aspects, because yes, we should sustain them physically by providing health checkups, by providing food and financial aid. This will help keep them alive. Yes, but okay, the medical treatment could also include their psychological well-being. Like, these are all aspects physically and emotionally that we should be taking care of, because a lot of their unchecked emotions and unchecked hormones do come from their body, but their body could also be a reflection of their mind. So everything from in and out is all interconnected. So in order to feel that control, and in order to actually feel like you're living your life, you have to be taking care of all parts of your body. Hell, even spiritually. Like, if somebody's identity is closely tied to their spiritual beliefs or their religious beliefs, then I think those should also be provided as additional care in order to keep them up and going. Because look, we really need to be supporting. The best way to support these people is by looking after what they care for and what they need the most. And sometimes what they need isn't what they want sometimes what they need isn't their first priority, but we have to look after them regardless, in all of the aspects and with all factors considered. So yeah, I chose this article basically because it's a very prevalent issue, having immigrants really suffering because maybe they're war-torn country, maybe they have specific circumstances that are not serving them, and they just really need to start new. Like, these people really need us as a society. We have the obligation to help out the rest of the members of our world. So that is one part of the reason, but also as a girl, I think that this topic just really touched me on another level because of fear. I am afraid that this will happen to me. I'm afraid that I will not be able to hold up as well as these people are, because the circumstances and, it's really difficult. And I hope my little tangent about control really makes sense, because that's actually a really big takeaway that I learned this year. Just being able to actually fulfill myself. Sometimes if you think you're in a hopeless situation and you're not receiving the assistance that you wish you had access to, or you wish were provided, I would just, consider what you need the most. Do you need your spiritual awakening? Do you need that sort of relationship? Like, what do you need? I think it's best when we don't get the external support that we ask ourselves these questions. What do we need? And then we find a way to access this stuff, because I just cannot imagine being in the shoes of those immigrant children. They have gone through so much, and I truly hope that life gets better for them and they get the proper care that they deserve, because truly awful. And yeah, I really hope the best for them. And so they really did inspire this podcast, just talking about, okay, what do we do in desperate situations when we don't really have that control? Like, when you're the one that kind of needs other people's help to get back up, okay, what can I do internally to kind of fix that unbalanced power dynamic between myself. Like right now, I am the one who needs help, but how can I shift that mindset? How can I make myself stand up again? That is something that I think is really worth looking into. And so, yeah, I really hope that this inspired something. You are doing so great, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.